Hi guys, welcome back to What Is This Weapon? I am Jonathan, and this is, I mean, they're not super common. You might have seen them. You'll see them on antiques auction sites. Sort of cannon barrel or Queen Anne, you might call it, pattern, flintlock pistol, mid-18th century. There are some out there. They're very nice, finely made, handcrafted, historic firearms. But this isn't actually what we're here to look at, because we like things that are weird and unusual. And some of you might have guessed what you think this is. Over on social media, this is what it actually is. So this was already in the collection by the time I joined the museum in 2009, and kind of glossed over it at first. We had a couple of miniature pistols in the collection, made for, well, I guess different reasons. Most of them are lost to history as to why people do this, but I was very struck by this one. Firstly, because it's fully functional, which we can show you in a moment. Not by firing it, unfortunately, and primarily because it's such a good match for its big brother here. Now then, by different makers, which really reflects the fact that a lot of these, I think I used the word pattern, they're not patterns per se, although the silver mounts on these would have come from a pattern book. You would have chosen, if you were custom ordering, you would have chosen your side plate. Show you that now, actually, on the big one, because basically everything on this is identical on the tiny one, which is why I'm so taken with it. But so we have a trophy of arms in silver on the side there, so that would appear on a page of a pattern book if you were ordering the thing custom. If you were just buying it off the shelf, the gun maker's already done that choice for you, obviously. And on the butt is an escutcheon plate in silver as well, blank as they often are, but in theory you could put an set of initials, a monogram on there, and we still probably wouldn't know who you were, unfortunately. But nothing on this one, and nothing on the tiny baby one either. We'll come in and look at that properly in a second. And the butt cap. So the theme of this and of its little brother are, I guess, victory and war, because these are all a form of what we call a trophy of arms. That's maybe no, I'd say they're all trophies of arms. So helmets, edged weapons, staff weapons, little gun barrels poking out here and there. Even wind instruments show up in there as well. I guess they're signaling on the battlefield. Colours, enemy colours, in theory, flags, they're all on there. So that's the set of furniture that you would get. And again, so I'll try and show you the same one here. There is your little trophy of arms on the side there. So you do lose, I guess, some detail, some resolution by scaling down that. Let's use the side plate as the example, into that tiny little one. It's nowhere near as detailed. This thing's just over 4 inches long in its entirety. It's not even the barrel. It's considerably shorter than just the barrel on the full-size version. And this is not a huge type of pistol. It's kind of like a belt pistol size, I guess. But this thing is just absolutely tiny. So we've got the side plate there, and there's the little escutcheon on the back. Same thing, but smaller and a bit less detailed. They've done a hell of a great job, though. In silver on both. And there is the butt cap. Now, here's the only significant decorative difference, is that it's not a trophy of arms on the butt cap. It's a grotesque mask. Now, we have other pistols, clearly, with that motif on there. So it's not 100% a match, but we wouldn't expect it to be. They are by different makers. Now, where we have another similarity, though, back to being the same, is the trigger guard. So we have another pair. This is from a pair. This is a one-off, or if it was a pair, we've lost the other one. But we haven't. So whoever in the past owned them did. But the trigger guards on these are both iron. So some of these brass, because it's a brass barrel, brass action, as it were, body lock, or lock plate. It's a box lock. Those are all brass, and on some of these pistols, the trigger guard is also brass. But on this one and its little baby here, they are both iron. So you have, without looking really, really closely, they are identical. The shape of the butt, very similar. Very, very similar. Any difference, I think, is purely down to the difficulty of carving a tiny butt and the preference of the designers. It does hook over a little more on the big one there, which is a bit more classical than the shape of that one. But I would say, if anything, the walnut stock on this is a nicer piece, or certainly they've chosen some nice patterns of grain there, and it's nicely polished up, so it actually looks even a little bit nicer than this. The design of the rest of the lock components, so we have a tiny little frizzen spring wrapped under the pan, just like we do on the big one. That's how these are set up. Tiny little frizzen, presumably face hardened to actually function. I'm not going to test it out, but the rest of it functions, so I'm guessing that that was hardened up, so you get a little spark out of it, a tiny little cigarette lighter or something, and the little tiny swan neck cock is pretty close to what's on this one as well, unsurprisingly. Even the shape here, the back of the lock body or plate is shaped very, very similarly as well. So you're looking at, if not patterns of pistol, then design conventions, fashion. Very fashion driven, as many things were. Furniture, clothing, and firearms. Certainly civilian firearms, very driven by the fashions of the day. We can often date things to within a decade purely on the stylistic changes. We even have, I'll show you side by side and then drop the big one, this decorative, almost shell-like carving, which we see on a lot of firearms of this nature, nicely carved on the big full-size version, and it's even represented on the tiny little wooden butt of this one as well. They needn't have done that. They could have made it simpler, and people still would have been impressed. And I think that's what this is. This is all about impressing people and maybe faking them out with scale as well. Now, on the trigger guard, I forgot to mention, is a tiny little sort of floral or... it's so tiny, I almost need a loop to check it out, but it's a sort of foliate decorative device, a little different to what's on the big one there. I'll show you those side by side as well. All right, what else do we have on here? Well, I mean, the reinforces, what we would call cannon style barrel. They have reinforced bands like on a cannon barrel. They are positioned very similarly. There's maybe less of a muzzle reinforce on the tiny one, but pretty close. More decoration on the breech area there. Again, slightly different decorative motif to this one, but it is there. Again, sort of foliate decoration there. And the tiny letters spelling London, which this has as well, but they're orientated horizontally. Depends on pistol to pistol as to how that's applied on there. But you typically get the place of manufacture, of course, as well as the maker. And what I think is two things are really impressive about this. One is that it did originally function. I can't get the sear to catch, but there's a mainspring in there. I don't want to work that too hard. Let's put that back down. And a frizzen with a frizzen spring, all very loose now. The sear doesn't catch the cock anymore, unfortunately, but it would have been functional when it was made. There's even a tiny, I don't know if we can even get in there to show you, a little pinprick touch hole in there next to the pan. So if you could grind your powder fine enough and have it still catch, in theory, this would function. In theory. Probably never intended to. The bore on there is, I've measured that at about 5 millimeters. I tend to work in millimeters when I'm measuring non-standard bores, next to the comparatively cannon-like muzzle of the full-size pistol there. Now, that's the second most impressive thing, is that they have actually incorporated the turn-off barrel into this. So for those of you who don't know, that's not only a style of pistol, but a sort of technical solution to the problem of your ball falling out of your barrel, and also getting as much pressure out of a small powder charge as possible. So what you would do, I'll show you on the big one as well. Incidentally, the one thing missing from the tiny replica, real pistol, whatever, is a lug on the bottom. So these came with little spanners that would slot over that lug and allow you to cinch that up tight and to undo it. And this doesn't have the lug on the barrel. That's the only feature that's missing from this. If I unscrew the barrel on this example, by the way, by Loader of London, working in the 1760s. London proof marks on this one, but this isn't the star of the show. There we are. There are the threads. There's a cup, essentially, and a powder chamber. So the cup is for the ball to sit on. So you pour your powder charge into the narrow chamber, you sit the ball on top, you take your barrel, which is narrower, which actually have a bit of paper in there, which is narrower than the threaded section, naturally enough, because that has to sit within it. And you screw that down on top, and then you don't need wadding to keep the bullet in, and the bullet gets slightly squeezed down the bore, giving you greater gas pressure. So you're making the most of what's quite a small powder charge. Downside is you can't increase your powder charge if you want to sort of overclock the gun, but there isn't really much to play with in terms of bore, barrel length. Yeah. So you kind of got the one option there.
Wow. Please tell me it's like Pirate's Grill. Is that?
These were my grandfather's, i.e. Cuffenston's grandfather. I can't even read that. This is written in like the 1950s or something, by the original owner.
You just discovered that now?
Yes. I mean, it's not exactly earth-shattering. I kind of wish we'd just done it on camera now, but...
I mean, it is on camera.
Yeah, so unfortunately this is not pirate treasure that we've just discovered in this barrel. I selected this off the cuff because it's such a close match for this piece that I've been wanting to cover, knowing that we had similar pistols. So I didn't look at it in detail, and I didn't realise that the previous owner has left a little note inside the barrel explaining that they were his grandfather's, and just describing what they are. There's nothing too earth-shattering on there, but it's nice to find a little bit of history. Later history, we're talking, I think, 20th century there. But it's always nice to find things hidden. When I was working at Edinburgh Castle doing military history there, I always hoped to find in the waistband of a kilt a gold coin, because the military kilts had gold sovereigns hidden in them for kind of escape, evasion purposes. But we never did. Bit of paper, not as exciting. Anyway, back to the show. So being so tiny, the threads are relatively, they're proportionately huge, and they're nowhere near as many of them. So obviously it's smaller anyway, but for a nice secure gas tight fit, you want a nice long bit of threaded breech there. This either never being fired, or maybe you try and shoot it. It doesn't need that. So they've made a bit of a shortcut there, but nonetheless they've done an actual turn-off barrel. It also, to be fair, doesn't have the cup for holding a ball either. It's just a hole. But in theory, you could put some powder in there and see if you can get it to light. I suspect it'd be very tricky with that tiny pan and the tiny touch hole. But there we go. Practically speaking, pulling the trigger would also be very difficult. You'd have to carry around a small stick. So that's almost everything on this. We do have, in lieu of proof marks, because the big version has the London proof marks, which are generic, we have instead a gunmaker or barrel maker's mark, which I think is a star and an RW, which is a small clue. And then a much bigger clue is the name Wilson in sort of script calligraphy. Basically, as you see in exactly the same place that you see Loader signed on the big one. So that is Robert Wilson. almost certain, who was apprenticed to Richard Wilson in 1734. So before, of course, this stuff was made. So it's the usual gunmaker's career path. You start as an apprentice. So he was the second apprentice of Richard Wilson. A family member, as the name would imply, although we don't know which family member. And we believe he's from Appleby. All of this information, by the way, is from an excellent article by the late DeWitt Bailey, who's a luminary in this field, in antique firearms. And that's on the American Society of Arms Collectors page, which is well worth checking out anyway. And they reproduce his article on the Wilson family of gunmakers. So this is an artifact of that family. So he gets his first sort of career break being made free of the gunmakers company in 1742 and works for Richard until 1759. And the significance of 1759 is that he submits his proof piece to become a gunmaker in his own right. And so from 1759 till his death in 1772, he is making the usual range of firearms, long guns, pistols, usual sort of thing in London. And that's when, at some point, round about 1760, he would have made this amazing little piece here. Which I think, if you just saw this in an antique shop or something, you would assume this was a modern maker making a miniature of an antique firearm. Well, that happens as well, but this is a genuine antique made at the time as well. Good question. Why would you make this? So although to become a gunmaker, you had to submit a proof piece or an essay piece, if you like. We don't believe that would have been miniature firearms. It's more likely this was a novelty item, maybe a custom order, maybe it was a pair, maybe it was in a case originally, don't know. I like to think of it sitting in a shop window, Wilson's shop window, maybe next to one of his full-size pistols, just to play with scale, astound people at how skilled he was, the sort of work you could get from this shop, come in and have a look around. Maybe even at arms fairs, basically, where you might travel around and exhibit your wares, or someone retailing your stuff might do that, and you'd see that and be, wow, if he's so good, he can make this tiny functional flintlock pistol, I'm going to go and buy a brace of full-size ones from him. Now, we obviously found this interesting enough to buy. I hope you found it interesting to learn about. This came to us from the collection of another luminary, Henk Visser. So he was a major collector of not only antique arms and armour, but also later arms. And he was involved in the arms industry, in fact. One of his company's products was the V40 mini grenade, which was used in Vietnam by Special Operations Forces. So there are a number of things from his collection in this collection because he had such an astonishingly good collection. So a few people involved in this tiny piece. We partly chose it for now because sort of, 'tis the season and all that. That this makes a nice sort of stocking stuffer. I wouldn't stuff it in a stocking. I'd want it behind glass or something, but it's small enough that it's a stocking filler, whereas this might be a cased pair of these might be your main present. I don't know. Thanks for watching as always, guys. Don't forget to do the usual YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, all that kind of thing, and check out our website, our social media channels. If you'd like to check out as well the History of Weapons and War app, where we've collaborated with a load of other weapon-related YouTubers who have some parallel content over there, please do that as well. But whatever happens, we'll see you again here next week.